Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Film Freaks, movies that we love. And we have a very interesting show for you this week. And just so you know, I am joined from my friend way out in California, Mr. Jonathan Moody.
How are you guys doing, everybody?
Yay.
Yes.
And then together, we are both joined by Mr. Joe Torek.
Hey, I'm glad to be joining you again, and looking forward to talking about this one today.
All
Yeah.
right. So on this episode, we are doing a special film that we allowed Joe to pick this time. So, Joe, go ahead and tell us what we're watching or what we're talking about.
So the first selection I got to make for one of these, and I chose something that it's not for everybody, but I absolutely love this film. It really holds a special place in my heart. So I chose Boogie Nights.
Yay!
Woo!
From 1997. Paul Thomas Anderson directed it, starring Mark Wahlberg. It was very polarizing to some people. Won't watch it basically because of subject matter, but I think it has so much going for it, and it's just such a well-made film. I think it definitely warrants a space in this in this series that we're doing here. First, a little bit about the story. It's about 17/18, I guess. He said he was 17 at the beginning, but he's basically a busboy who goes in from Torrance, California, over to Reseda, and he's a busboy just trying to make ends meet for himself, and trying to, yeah, and he's trying to make ends meet for himself and trying to find himself. So he goes there, and he's spotted by a porn director, excuse me,
Jack Horner.
Jack Horner, yes. Burt Reynolds in an Oscar-nominated role for it. He was great in it. Before I go into any much more of the story, I'm going to talk a little bit about when I saw it for the first time. So I saw it the weekend of my 25th birthday. Saw it. I was working at a theater at the time, and we got it. I didn't get to watch the screening the night before, where we usually watch stuff, and all. So I'd watch it with an audience that opening weekend that it came out in our area. So it met with some very different responses from people. Some people laughed at times, and some people were sort of in shock at times from different elements of the film. I think there was a few people that probably got up and left, but that's because it's, like I said, it's not for everybody. It dealing with the porn industry in the 70s and 80s. It's not exactly a mainstream type of thing, but so I saw it with that audience, and I was just completely taken in. From the first scene of the movie. There's like a minute before they even show anything. There's some music playing in the background. I'm just like, okay, what the heck am I going to get into here?
Well, it's funny you mentioned about it not really being mainstream. Back in 1997, it wasn't really mainstream, but I would say it's a lot more mainstream now. There's a lot more shows, a lot more stuff, a lot more interest in what they call the golden age of porn and getting into the 80s. And there's a lot of crossover there. In fact, there's even a news podcast coming out that kind of revolves around that. But I digress. I remember seeing it in the theaters too, and I was just blown away because I've always been a big Paul Anderson fan. And this is just one of my favorite films. And the movie was cast to perfection, and the acting was just fabulous by absolutely everybody.
Yeah. So, Jonathan, when was the first time you saw it?
Good God. See, when in 97 I was in high school, so it wasn't something I was like running for. And I didn't really know anything about that industry, nor did I really care about that industry at that time. It was probably not till like I started working at the video store I worked at. I probably discovered it on there, I believe. But I honestly, I don't even think I've seen, like, I own the DVD. I should probably own a Blu-ray at some point of it, or 4K if that ever comes out. I was never huge into it. Like, even when I watched it back in the day, I didn't I don't even think I watched the whole thing of it, which I just rewatched because I think I have seen the whole thing of it. But the first time I watched it, I kind of got bored by it. Just because
Wow.
it's not my style or whatever. It's not my kind of movie. Generally speaking.
Mhm.
P.T. Anderson, honestly, I'm like he's hit or miss for me and very, very more miss for me than hit,
Wow.
Like
Wow.
I absolutely hate Magnolia. Like
Oh, you're killing me,
I
Moody.
I find that movie to be atrocious.
I love
if
that
that was
movie.
this movie like that you wanted, yeah, I would have said no. Boogie Nights I prefer a little bit better. I like his movie Hard Eight a lot.
Yeah.
Which he is very upset that they changed the name from Sydney to Hard Eight, which
Mhm.
Sydney is the worst name because it just says nothing about the movie. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Mhm.
Hard Eight, at least it's a gambling movie, or has gambling in it or whatever. But anyway,
Yeah. Or it could work for the porn industry as well when you think
I know
about it.
it definitely could.
Oh,
But anyway, but
I'm the opposite. I'm a
I know.
big
Well,
Paul Anderson fan.
let me just finish as saying like, yeah. So later on, and it's funny because I like the ones that people don't really like as much. Like I love Punch Drunk Love, which a lot of people have have dissed that movie. I think it's freaking hilarious, and like probably Adam Sandler's best performance. As like for an actual acting job, not just being a really funny comedian. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I was not into P.T. Anderson and Boogie Nights. I had to watch like 2 or 3 times in order for me to actually really like get into it. But after watching it, this time I really, really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I think things have changed as far as the way that I feel for films, especially I love movies that are like ensemble casts. I love movies that have like this, a lot of stuff happening at once and a lot of characters, and you have to get to know everybody. Like I could see this have being a TV series sort of
Mhm.
thing, and I just enjoyed it for what after watching it again for what it really is. So looking back, maybe I was a little too harsh on it. Maybe I was sort of bored by the 70s. Also, I live I live right by Reseda. I actually went down
Mhm.
to Reseda
Hmm.
before to go see the Karate Kid house or apartments and stuff. And it's just so funny to like they mentioned Sherman Way, and I drove down Sherman. It's just fucking cool, to me. Like it's like, oh my god, now I'm living here. Now I've got to
You're more
watch.
connected to the film now than when you first saw it.
I
Yeah.
know for sure.
Well, you mentioned something about Sherman Way, and I think that one of the scenes towards the end where it's like three of the different stories cross up on Sherman Way at the same time, where the donut shop is going and where Jack Horner is doing the video with Roller Girl, trying to, and crossing up with Roller Girl's past and all that, as well as Dirk being in. Getting jumped by all the guys. That all happens right there on
Right.
Sherman Way. Yeah. So I guess living in that area, I mean, it seems like he really, and a few times I've visited out there, it seems like location wise, he really nailed California. I mean, and really nailed that time even. The first shot of the movie I was going into a little bit ago. It's like 2-3 minutes, no cuts, but it introduces probably what 10 of the characters or so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the way he did it from going from the title on a marquee, and then he sort of twirls with the showing receipt, and then pans down, then goes across the street, introduces Jack pulling in, and then talking to Luis Guzman's character for a minute, then them going into the club, and then it finally, after all that, it focuses on Eddie or Dirk, and then that is just. I mean, to me, that was just an amazing introduction of a film. And he does that a few times. And towards the end, he does another scene like that where Jack's walking around through the house right before he does
Right.
the last scene of the movie. And And I think that he around the pool scene, about middle of the film, or probably about a little, when he introduces Ed to Chess, I can't remember, John C. Reilly's character.
Mm.
And when they introduce each
Oh,
other to the
yeah.
pool the first time, they have the little back and forth, and they're trying to one up each other. And I think that's on throughout the film. But the way that he went around the pool and sort of in the water, out of the water, just the camera work was just amazing in this film.
And that's always been a mark, in my opinion, of Paul
Mhm.
Anderson's work, is that his camera work is just amazing. There are a number of really, really great shots, both in this film, but I mean, if you look at, There Will Be Blood, and even
Mhm.
Magnolia, which movie, like, I love it. I absolutely, and I am a guy that hates musicals or anything like that. Anything that's really contrived like that. I absolutely adored Magnolia. It was so good.
Mhm.
But yeah, he's just a fantastic. He's one of my absolute favorite American directors, and he's just so great at setting up the story and then allowing these characters to develop in front of you. And you're right, you have to give them a chance. It's not like nothing is really quick and boom, boom, boom. You got to give the story and the characters a time to flower a little bit. But
Mm.
you're gonna get sucked in if you really want to pay attention to a great story and well drawn out characters, in my opinion.
Definitely. I honestly, I mean, like, re-looking at it, and like I said, I think things have changed for me as far as like watching films these days and actually appreciating the art of filmmaking and stuff, as opposed to when I was like in my 20s or so. I wasn't early 20s. I wasn't thinking about, you know, art of filmmaking. Like I looked at that opening shot, and I mean, you can like think of stuff like Goodfellas or all these other great films that kind of have those like long tracking shots where you follow people around. And
Very
but
kinetic.
yeah, but it just feels like it's perfect for that, you know. I did enjoy meeting all these people at once, and you kind of get to know them, and they mention all their names, so you're like aware of who they are. Like, hey, have you met blah blah blah, you know? And then you're like, oh,
Right.
okay, that's
And it's a very, very effective way of introducing everybody, like we were saying, at once. So you kind of get that overwhelming feeling like you would be if you were at a party and you're just getting introduced to dozens of people.
they do that again in the party scene, you
Right.
know,
Right.
outside where they're
Yeah, the pool.
all at the pool scene, which is fucking, I mean, once again, just a great like kind of introduction to all these other wacky characters, which you meet a lot more characters. You get to meet
Right.
like John Cheadle's character. You get to meet, you know, all these characters that you don't know who they are, but you're like, oh, they're,
And
you know.
I love it because, if you look at some of the other directors who've been able to successfully utilize very kinetic camera work, I'm thinking primarily of people like Stanley Kubrick. Like, for example, when he uses that in The Shining and you're following Danny as he goes through the hotel,
Mhm.
and that's a way for the audience to explore the hotel, and the world that they're in opens up a little bit.
Yes.
The same way with it's done in this film is it's not so much exploring the space as it is exploring the people who are in the space and getting to know all the characters and seeing you're getting a taste of the world that the Dirk Diggler is trying to sort of become the, king of the hill of,
Yeah.
Mhm.
pretty much.
And about the pool scene, when they pan around, they go all around, open it all up, and then it closes down when it shows Scotty being introduced, Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, and it just sort of zooms in on Dirk, and it's sort of how there is a sadness with Scotty's character that I took, but I mean, and really there was a sadness in a lot of the characters.
Oh, there's a
Yeah.
sadness to almost all the characters. Like,
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, in fact, like every single character has some kind of dramatic conflict or, you know, on them that is very deep. You know, there's, you know, you talk about Scotty, who's obviously, I don't know if he's just gay or bi or whatever, but it has like that attraction to Mark's character, and there's something more deep into that. And then there's you know, there's Roller Girl, who you find out later, like she was this girl in high school or whatever before, that these people met, and she had this like other past. Like it's one of those things where I start to get into the characters and kind of wish that there were like a continuation of this. Like I could have like dived deeper into the characters. I would have like if this were a transmedia project or something, which at the time like that wasn't even like a thing, but like if this were that they would have done like a web series or a podcast or a book about the characters some more, dive deeper into the characters, because that's what I would have loved.
I very much like the fact that he's showing these people who at the time you would have thought, oh, being in the porn industry and getting to have all as much sex you want would be the greatest job in the world. But no, these are very broken people who have to experience a lot of crap in their lives. And each one of them ends up paying a price for their involvement in the porn industry. And that's really what happens to people who, were in it. And I guess up until today, maybe it's not as bad today, but certainly in the 70s, if you got involved in the porn industry, you could pretty much kiss any other quote unquote legitimate career you were looking at goodbye.
Well, that's true. I want to point that out to you, that like you're right. That a lot of times that was the way that it was back then. Nowadays, it's very much like more in the mainstream. It's kind of becoming more okay. Like with like OnlyFans being very supportive of that industry, and with a lot of things becoming more like the internet. I mean, this was like the 70s, and then I think it ends in the 80s. Doesn't even go into the 90s. That industry was like, it was a terrible, these were like the lost boys and girls of the world, and they were all together. They found a home together.
Right. And I can't help but think that, I mean, this movie got like 2 or 3 Academy Award nominations. I can't help but think that one of the reasons that I think the porn industry in general has gotten kind of a spit shine compared to the way it used to be looked at, I think you can point directly to this film and say this had a way of softening everybody else's view on the porn industry and the sex industry in general, because they made such a great, compelling film about it, and it showed all of these characters as flesh and blood, 3-dimensional human beings who were just like everybody else. They have to bust their ass to do this job, and they don't get compensated nearly enough for the things that they have to go through.
Yeah. And they were all like just looking for family. It seemed they were trying to make their. Ed Wahlberg's character. I mean, his home front, the way his mom treated him, it was like I felt just awful. And he was just looking for family, and then he found it with this really odd offshoot of a group of people. But it worked, and then it's obviously decadence took over. And go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say. It's just like, if you look at him, he is a child. Even though he was like 17, 18, whatever, he acted like a child. There's that part where he breaks down. He was like, "You're not the boss of me," and I'm like, "Good God, dude!"
Well, Well, he was jumping with his girlfriend on the bed, and it was like a little kid jumping on the bed.
Yeah,
I mean, he was an innocent kid who just who had a gift, I guess, and that's where he found his home by way of that gift.
It's really funny because like John C. Reilly, who worked with Mark in the scenes together or whatever, very childlike. He later on did a very much a similar role in Step Brothers, with Will Ferrell. Then Will Ferrell worked with after he worked with John C. Reilly on a few films, ended up working with Mark Wahlberg on a few movies. So it's like they're all kind of all connected as friends, and that's kind of like, I almost feel like this movie sort of brought that together too. It's like you could tell all these people had a great time working together and creating something that's just sort of just fun and enjoyable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Except, well, one of them didn't though.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
Burt Reynolds didn't. He didn't think that highly of it.
He turned it down
afterwards.
7 times.
Right. But I'm so glad he decided to go back into it. But I did want to point out a couple of things. First of all, This film is an expansion of a short film that Paul Anderson did way back called The Dirk Diggler Story. I guess it was like a 20-minute short. And he finally was able to get the money and the capital together to turn this into a full-length feature. Thank goodness that he was able to do that. And then the second thing is, this movie is kind of loosely based, and Dirk Diggler himself is kind of loosely based on John Holmes. And that whole scene where they're ripping off the drug guy, and that really happened. And there are several movies that have approached that subject, and in different variations. Like some of it's a little bit more funny, some of it's a little more tragic. But it's one of those sort of Hollywood legends that people who sort of got into the whole lore behind the 70s porn and 80s porn scene in LA, they kind of know about it, and it's become kind of like an urban legend almost. But yeah, it's really amazing how he was able to bring that. And you have to wonder, gosh, if only John Holmes was still alive, I wonder what his reaction would have been seeing a character pretty spot on based on him.
You touched on a scene that it's one of my favorite scenes of any movie, probably in my adulthood.
Awesome.
That scene with Alfred Molina when Rayhad Jackson is to me, it encompasses also inside that scene about 45 seconds to me, which is one of the most brilliant acting jobs that I've seen, and I'm still shocked that Mark Wahlberg didn't get nominated for this film. When they stop in the middle of between Sister Christian and Jesse's girl, and it just sits there on his face, and he trends, and it's like he's looking at where he came from, where he's going, where he's at right now, what's happened. It was just such brilliance, and just his eyes, and it was just utter perfection. And I mean, the whole scene setup, I mean, with the firecracker or the little poppers being thrown around, everything about it.
I didn't know that was. I thought literally somebody was just shooting a gun like a bunch of times, and then they show the guy and he's like, oh, he likes firecrackers. And
weird, creepy drug shit. Yeah, Alfred Molina was perfect in that role. He was so good.
And I read somewhere that he was unfamiliar with those two songs, and he had to sort of just listen to them repeatedly before that scene and get accustomed to Sister Christian and Jesse's girl. But in the one guy throwing the little poppers, I think he's wearing a Rick Springfield shirt or something too, which is great. I mean, it's just and when Rayhad, when he does the roulette with the gun, and it's just like he looks over at them like I got you and stuff like that, and it's just his eyes. I mean, he looks like he really is. I mean, he becomes that character. And I was also reading somewhere that there was, it might have been in a documentary or something also, that there was a whole other avenue that they could have explored with Rayhad's character as a drug dealer and stuff like that, but they didn't. And I mean, 2.5 hours, they really didn't have enough time to. I mean,
yeah.
But it goes back to Moody's point about this could have made a great TV series.
It could have made a great TV series. It could have made. There's so much with it, like. But see, I guess, I mean, had this movie been made now, yes, it would have been like a TV series. There would have been a lot more.
Like The Deuce on HBO.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. This would have been like, if they're going to revamp something and put something out on HBO, like if HBO is going to remake a movie and turn it into a TV series, this would be like the perfect one to do. Honestly,
I mean, they could do an easy 10-12 part thing at the minimum. I mean, they could probably do multiple. I mean, because you have so many different avenues to go with it. So much more that I'd like to know. I mean, from each perspective. I mean, I'd even like to know more about the Colonel. I mean,
I wouldn't.
well, no, because it's like when he gives the expression at the pool when he's like, I heard you have a big cock. He's like, can I see it? And the fact that Anderson doesn't show it is perfect. He shows it at the end, obviously at the end of the film, but he doesn't show it there, but he shows his eyes. The Colonel's expression when he's like, thank you. It's priceless.
I know, but like his
brilliant.
whole pedophile stuff, I mean, that was interesting. Like that, like it was just interesting to kind of see, like, that was probably at that time in the 70s and 80s there, that was probably how some of the producers were, whatever, and they were getting in trouble for a lot of different, like, personal stuff. They do it more now,
Yeah. Well, he got his comeuppance though.
At the end, yes.
Yeah. But he brought an underage girl to the pool party. I mean, because when the girl that ODs,
Little Cinderella.
Yeah. So I mean, but even during these serious and tragic moments, it's just some of the stuff that's said. It's like the way it's done. There's a strong balance of comedic parts to it too, because it's like the colonel's response, like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Yeah, this is the second girl that OD'd on me in 2 days, and it's just some of the way that it came across, the responses and all. It's just like it's funny, but yet it's so serious.
Tragic. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, it's very tragic. And
Well, I was just going to say, if you guys get the chance, and you may have already done this, I don't know. There's a film that's called Wonderland with Val Kilmer and Kate Bosworth and Dylan McDermott, and it touches on that whole thing about John Holmes and the ripping off the drug guy, and it kind of takes it from the tragic point of view. Definitely watch that, and it would be such a great movie to watch back to back with Boogie Nights. It was just so interesting, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but
that's probably a very tragic double feature, though. Like,
you
have to watch Wonderland first and then watch Boogie Nights, because, like, if you watch, because I've seen Wonderland years ago, and if you watch Wonderland first, like, you don't get a lot of that comedy that and I feel like Boogie Nights, what I'm so glad about Boogie Nights is, like, the ending was sort of, in a way, bittersweet and very you really care.
it's balanced.
Yeah, and so at the end, you're like, okay, he's back. Everything's kind of back to, like, where it should be. And I was actually thinking about it when I was watching it. I was going, as a writer's perspective, I was like, that's interesting that, like, the last 20 minutes, 20 pages, whatever, like, all this craziness happens that kicks his mind into gear. And it goes back to your thing, Joe, about when he's, like, looking, and you hear Jesse's girl, all that stuff. And then, all that craziness happens, and he leaves, and he comes back, and he, like, has his tail between his legs. And Jack missed him so much. You could tell, like, he wasn't even using that other guy anymore. He just didn't care. Like, he missed this dude. He created him. It's like Dr. Frankenstein in a way. Like, he created a monster, but he still loved the monster, and he wanted to see the monster come home. So he did come home, and then at the end, it's, like, really sweet. To me, it was just like that is the perfect way to kind of end it.
Right.
It was the when the flock was gone. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of balance in this film, because, like you said, it's very bittersweet. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens, but there's a lot of heart, and you could tell these people, even though it's kind of a misbegotten family, they all love each other and they all support each other, and it's just got a really, really nice message. Where you would compare that to, say, Wonderland. Wonderland is very dark, and it just goes even worse as the movie goes on.
Yeah. There's another character that there's probably a few of them that we still haven't really even touched on, but William H. Macy's character, Little Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, the assistant director on it, it's like and his wife is a real porn star, supposedly, too. So
Nina Hartley.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
So it was interesting seeing how what he really had an emotional attachment in the fact that of what his wife did to him. I mean, just by not really caring, and it just shows that what it can have a toll on people and stuff like that. If he really wasn't fit for that world, it didn't seem. And
he played a very intense character.
Well, what I didn't get, though, like, maybe I missed it, or maybe it was never really explained. And that's sort of the humor of it, is, like, a lot of the humor is the fact that she sort of it just keeps fucking all these guys. However, the thing that annoyed the crap out of me is, like, how does she just keep ending up wherever he's at? Like, you know what I mean? Wherever he's like, he's not living there. So like every time he's at places, he's like, where's my wife? You know, I'm like,
Yeah,
why is his
it's
wife
like
there?
it's like she's trying to find out ahead of time so she could like rub his nose in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like at first it's at his house, I think. He comes home because she
Mhm.
says go sleep on the couch.
Yeah.
Then later it's like at the fucking parties and stuff. And I'm like it's outside. She's fucking one dude outside. Then she's fucking another dude, like the last dude in, you know, one of the rooms at the New Year's Eve party. And I'm like, wait a minute. So they like invite her over like when they
She's-
should know like this bothers him, you know, like I
well,
mean
but a lot of them like to watch her perform, I guess.
they're
And you know
well-
how it is when you start running around with the same crowd, there's always going to be that one person that stirs the pot.
yeah.
Well, and I think another point that this made me think of this too is sex in general for the entirety for everybody there was basically a commodity. It was a product. It was it's what they were doing. It wasn't anything sensual about it. It was nothing emotional when they really got sexual. But to Little Bill's thing, it was his wife was betraying him emotionally,
Mhm.
and I think that's really what made him completely snap and just
Snap.
and then when but it's like after he shot and killed her and whoever who was in there, the guy that was in there with her, he went there and it's like he looked at everybody and it's almost like there's a little bit of a smile, like a sense of ease or contentment that he's at least at peace with himself. That he
Relief.
killed himself. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just
Well, there's not a bad performance in this film. I would say that every single performance from every single actor was spot on. My personal favorite of all this was Julianne Moore. She brought such heart and such warmth to her character. My God, she was like everybody's mother. She was like the one character everybody could go to when anybody was hurt or when anybody needed
Mhm.
something. And she was just giving so much all the time. And you just felt terrible for her because all she wanted was her daughter or was her kid. And it was just a shame that she was going through all
Yeah.
this crap just because of the industry that she was in.
Right.
yeah, and this with it's pure heartbreak when she goes to I think the judge and her ex-husband were porn stars that are it's not real actors in the sense of conventional acting. They were porn star actors that played the roles. So it was like the roles were flipped from them into being a serious actor, and she was playing a porn star in that scene. But when she's told that basically she's not going to get her child or get to visit, and she's out there and just crying, it's just pure heartbreak. It's
I know.
It is, and it sucks, and it happens all the time. There was one porn actress that I kind of followed for the '90s. I'm not going to mention her, but I remember she was in there for a while. She was very popular, and then she left, and she used the money to go to college, and she became like some kind of a either a nurse or a physical therapist or something like that. And she went to try to pursue that as a regular career. And like 6 months into it, you know, the hospital that she was working at found out what she did in her past, and they immediately fired her, even though she was doing a great job. She couldn't get hired to do the thing that she went to school for because of her past. And it's so unfair. It's such bullshit. You know, I mean, I just felt so bad. So I felt bad for her character because of that too.
Which
Well-
which goes to I just want to bring up the fact that you were talking earlier, Paul, about how that the industry has definitely changed completely, where somebody could put that or could do movies or whatever, and they're not going to be turned down necessarily. Now, okay. Like if you're trying to be a dancer for like tween kids or something, you might have a problem if you're doing porn. I don't know. But if you're trying to be a doctor or something, people aren't going to don't these days they don't use that as like your, you know, as much negative as it was back in like the 90s, where the 90s or and 80s and 70s where it was like, you know, like people legit were, you know, not happy with people who were in
Oh
that
yeah,
industry.
families would disown you. You could never. I mean, and that's why a lot of them would drink and do drugs and stuff because they knew. I mean, once your looks start to go, and that's pretty much it. You're bottlenecked. You can't do
Mhm.
anything. You know. I'm just
Yeah, I
glad
think-
that it's no longer really like that.
Yeah, there was really only one person from that time period that made the transition from doing any sort of porn to real life or regular acting, and that'd be what Stallone probably, because he did, but he only did one sort of. Sylvester Stallone did like
Yeah.
one thing, but somebody who did like a lot of films and make transition. I mean, I guess Tracy Lords did a few
Yeah, I was going to say
things.
Tracy Lords is probably the one who really made it, and her. Well, there's a big debate about exactly what she admitted to and what she didn't admit to, and I'm not going to get into any of that. But she was at least in a number of fairly famous movies, and she has a legit acting career now.
Yep.
So
Mhm.
she was at Scarecare even. We met her.
Oh,
Did you?
did you actually did you?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, she was really sweet.
Yeah.
She was cool.
There was another character that we have. I don't think we've even mentioned so far. He shows up about halfway through the film, and that's Thomas Jane's character,
Mhm.
Oh my God, yes.
Todd Parker.
Right.
I guess he was a dancer who just sort of just became was the bad influence on Dirk, I guess. that sort of took him down a
Yeah.
whole different
Thomas
road.
Jane
But-
is so cool. He's one of my
And it's-
favorite actors.
and it's kind of funny that he did that because did this movie because years later he did that TV show Hung,
On
which
HBO.
which is really a funny show. I mean, I
Awesome.
unfortunately it ended without much of a resolution to the series, but
Yeah.
absolutely I loved that show when it was on. But his performance, I mean, is just fit right in with the whole, and the way that they had him have his mustache and his beard and everything. I mean, he fit 70s, early 80s type of feel perfectly. And I think they all did, really.
Yeah, so it was really acted and set up and just dressed to perfection. It was really, really well done. The music, gotta
Oh,
love the
yeah.
music, especially if you're into big in the 70s music and early 80s. That was really, really good. The other one I wanted to mention that really blew me away because I didn't know her when I first saw this film was Heather Graham. Now, I didn't know how much she had done prior to that, but she was a revelation. I was like, wow, she is so good with this. Because you think that, this weird porn chick who's going to be on roller skates all the time is kind of a caricature, but she doesn't play her like that. She really gives her a lot of depth and a lot of warmth. And,
Mhm.
you end up really, really rooting for her at the end. She just wants to get her GED and not be considered, a failure from high school, that she wants to be somebody. And
Uh-huh.
It's really cool.
And
Yeah.
she brutally uses those skates too in one scene.
So interesting thing. I read this article on Heather Graham because after watching this movie, I was like looking her up or whatever, and I realized she was never married, and that was an interesting. I was like, wait, she's never been married, and apparently, she's talks about how, and I guess this goes really well with Boogie Nights, but she's very freeing with her sexuality like thing where she's just very happy with being sexual, period, and she's okay with it. Like, she doesn't believe people should feel insecure about about sex and stuff like that, and she kind of goes into that and saying that, like, when you get married, it's kind of all that is kind of cut off, and everything. And I just thought that was interesting because that is her character. And Boogie Nights, I mean, she's Roller Girl. She's she does do nudity. That's as far as I know, that's her only nudity that she's done. But at least she felt comfortable doing it. And I mean, the stuff that her character says at times, I'm like, that's not Heather Graham. That's not the Heather Graham I know from Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, or all these other all these mainstream movies, right? And then, but I thought she did such a wonderful job. Just
She
I
did.
absolutely adored her in this movie, and it was actually like a year after. It was made like a year after Swingers, and that was like one of the first times you ever got to see Heather Graham in something, So I adored her in it a lot. I thought it was really funny. She never takes the skates off, and you never
I know.
ever see it. Never see her do it. So
That's awesome. See, I never saw Swingers, so for me, that at the time, that was the first time I had seen her, and I was like, wow, she did such a great job with that character.
yeah,
I had seen her in a few other things. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but it was nothing in this vein. And from what I read, that they didn't even approach her at first about doing this because they didn't think she would be open to the to the stuff that was going to be necessary for the role. But she read it and was like, "Oh my gosh, this is the role!" And I mean, rightfully so for her. I mean, it fit her perfectly.
Well, that's the thing with this movie. I think that pretty much sums up everybody's like thoughts on this. Even Mark Wahlberg, I believe, at first he almost turned it down because he was afraid like people just want to see him as underwear again, and stuff is what his like thing was. Like he just thought that was the only excuse. And I think once he read it and Burt not wanting to do it was I mean, obviously this like Burt to me, I feel like Burt was one of those guys that didn't respect the industry at all, didn't respect porn industry. And maybe he did late. No, I don't think he did ever because
that plus a lot of other famous actors turned down that role. I know he originally wanted like Harvey Keitel to be in that role and a few other big name actors, and they all were like, no, 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 no.
Well, because P.T. Anderson at that time was not the P.T. Anderson he is today. So I think a lot of people were afraid that this would not be an Academy Award nominated movie. This would not be something that would like, because it could have, if you think about it, even with that cast, it could have been a disaster. With the wrong director, it could have been a disaster in the making, and would have like looked and sounded and like been grungy look, you know what I mean? And but the fact that he made it look like a top-notch Hollywood movie, having only directed one other film before this that was not Hollywood, was an independent feature film, he basically made something that put him legitimate, made him legitimate, and made those actors, again, he put Philip Baker Hall, who he worked on Hard Eight with John C. Reilly, I believe, was in Hard Eight as well. And then all of a sudden he had all these other actors, Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was
great in this,
who he put in Magnolia and all the other movies.
The Master, yeah.
The Master, yeah. Punch Drunk Love.
Well, here you go. How about this for a thought? You know how Paul Thomas Anderson likes to work with Daniel Day-Lewis. Suppose he had put Daniel Day-Lewis in this. What role would he have been? I can't imagine.
Oh. I think he would have played the Colonel.
Then the Colonel would have had a much bigger role.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was thinking like, I mean, because he wasn't. Well, that was about the same time he did Gangs of New York. So, yeah, you'd have to. It wouldn't be a small role. It'd have to be a bigger role, or the role would have to be evolved into.
He could have been Jack Horner, but I can't really see anybody but Burt.
No. And Burt made that.
But okay, so there's conflicting stories right now, by the way. So I've been checking out all these like YouTube videos of for Burt Reynolds, and Burt Reynolds has said that he's in 2012, 13, whatever it was, that he has still not seen Boogie Nights, right? However, there was an interview with Mark Wahlberg where Mark Wahlberg talked about how him and Burt Reynolds went to see it at a theater, and Burt actually told him, I hope this movie doesn't suck, right? So I don't know if he ever watched it with them or something, but like, I'm wondering if like that he tries to like kind of have this thing. Maybe it was a publicity thing because he.
Well, I think the movie he did like a couple movies before that he really got stung on. It was the one with Demi Moore where she's playing a stripper.
Oh, Striptease.
Yeah, Striptease, which he got roasted in. And kind of unfairly. I didn't think that movie was that bad. It wasn't great by any shakes, but it wasn't that bad. But they roasted him royally. And I think he was very, very gun-shy about appearing in any other kind of film that was even close to that kind of subject matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think he also had the way that Anderson goes about shooting stuff, and he was really young at the time, too. And Burt's was obviously a big time veteran of theater, of movies and stuff. So I mean, I think they butted heads a bit too. So I mean, but what came out on screen worked, and
absolutely
that's the main thing. You were talking about different people that was up for different roles and stuff like that. I read that DiCaprio was up for the main role, but he turned it down for a little film called Titanic.
Yeah, I wonder
And
if that.
I think it worked. I think it worked for him though.
I think he's okay. I think
Yeah.
you
I
know,
think it worked for both. I think it worked for both of them.
yeah, I think it worked for him, and it definitely worked for Mark Wahlberg. I believe like Mark Wahlberg needed this movie to because he had done Basketball Diaries, and that's the movie that Paul Thomas Anderson saw that made him think like
It
this
had both
guy's
of
an
them in
action.
it.
Had
Right.
both of them in it. I think
Yeah.
he did originally ask Leonardo because of that
Mhm.
movie and everything, and then Leonardo said, "I'm sorry, but I'm already tied to Titanic." But I think they met at like a bar or something, and stuff. So it was really nice. But then, what is it? Then he asked Mark Wahlberg, and Mark Wahlberg was worried because he was, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Exactly. He was trying to leave all that crap behind him. This
Well,
was the best career move he could have done.
Which he
he
thought it was not going to be the best career. He thought it was going to be the exact opposite. He thought it was going to be the thing that kills it because everybody's going to be thinking about him, singing songs in his thing.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
he did have a film the year before that he wasn't the main character, but he was the bad guy in Fear. Remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
With was Alyssa Milano and Reese Witherspoon. I think was in
I
there.
own it, but I won't. I haven't watched it in forever since.
Well,
Alyssa
there's
Milano.
yeah, I know, right? but there's a scene in Fear that's really troublesome though to me, and I mean that's I
Oh,
guess
that's
a
now.
different topic.
That's why. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
dog situation, but that's all I'm gonna say. I will say though, I have like okay, so I really enjoyed the scene where he's creating his own demo track and everything. And the reason I love it is because if Mark Wahlberg's and has that great song, Great Vibrations, and he's actually a pretty decent singer, when it comes to things. And the way that they made him sing completely off key, like terrible, just made me I just loved it because
And I love that they're trying to convince the producer this is going to be the greatest thing. We're going to bring all this money. They're going to be superstars. You just have to let us get the tape. And you can tell the producer clearly knows that it's a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
And he's not letting him have anything till he gets his money.
This is a YP. This is not an NP. This is not my problem. He's like, I don't, and then that's when I'm Riley. I don't understand this jargon you're talking about.
This industry jargon.
Another thing about that song, was the song that was used in Transformers the movie.
Really?
The Touch. Stan Bush. The animated movie came out in '86. Stan Bush sang it. It's called The Touch, and it is the title song from the Transformers animated movie.
That is funny.
There's
Wow.
a little bit of my childhood fandom.
Wow.
Well, wait. So wait. So now I'm wondering about that. So does that mean Mark did that? Like, did Mark was Mark doing a cover song? Was that supposed to be, or was that supposed to be his original song or something?
Well, I think for the sake of the movie, they're treating it as an original, but knowing how they were sort of trying to do, I don't say con, but not very smart with some of their decision making. They could have been trying to rip it off just as well as him doing it on his own.
That wouldn't
I don't
surprise me.
Well,
Yeah, so-
they could say that that Dirk Diggler created that song and Stan Bush stole it.
I know, right?
Right.
My song, it's my big dick.
I absolutely love Mark in this movie. I mean, I am a huge Mark Wahlberg fan. Like, I mean, aside from The Happening, which yes, but I think he's generally a really good, fun actor. Like but he doesn't really get dramatic roles these days. He gets action or he gets comedy, and he's just really good in this movie.
Yeah, he brings the perfect amount of pathos to his character because you can't help but feeling sorry for him through all the stuff that he goes through.
I mean, when he gets jumped by those guys in the truck, I just absolutely wanted to cry because, like, I mean, that was him at one of his lowest. And then, of course, it goes even lower with the drug deal. But, like right then and there, you're like looking at this going, okay, this is like the final act of the movie. And like all of this, like, horrible stuff is happening to all these people. Like, it was so sad, but so like yeah, at the end, once again, at the end, it's just it all came together and worked out.
Mhm.
I think what I'm going to do is get a hold of some of those poppers. So the next time I'm on one of your sets, I'm just going to wander around and people are like, "What the hell's going on?"
I know. I
One of
was wondering about that.
one last thing I was thinking of with Anderson when he said that really that this is unlike a lot of films, that there's not much real character arc in the sense of like a big change, if you will, from the characters and all. And I think if you really take a step back and look at it, it's like, well, outside, I mean, to me, it's all about that family and just trying to find your family, find whatever it is for your family. But it's like a lot of the characters at the beginning are in the industry, and at the end they're in the industry. A few of them have left and moved on to where they're. But to me, it wasn't about characters necessarily changing good or bad or whatever. They found their family, and I think that was
right.
And to me, that was the gist of the movie. And to think of a movie about the porn industry in the 70s and stuff like that. And the truth is, it's about family, and that's
definitely the theme.
And if you ever read any of the literature about some of these porn stars in the period, and I've gone and I've read a lot of stuff because there's actually a lot of information out there, and they talk about how they would be together as production companies, and they were kind of a family atmosphere for a lot of them, and many of them it was the only family they had. And it's really a shame, and it's nice to see a movie kind of explore that, because you generally don't see that anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't say adore the film, because that's maybe not the right word to say for it, but it's just from a filmmaking perspective, it's top notch, and it's just from a production element, from an acting element, from the music that they chose, from every last detail. To me, it's just perfect.
Right. And for those people that are upset about the subject matter, they have to understand that the whole porn thing is secondary. That's not what the movie is about. The movie is about these characters, and like you said, them trying to find a place in the world and a family to belong to. That's what it's about.
I mean,
I'm glad it wasn't an 85-minute movie. I'm glad that it's 2.5 hours, and there's another 30 minutes of bonus scenes in there.
The 2 hours and a half fly by really fucking quick. Like, I honestly, you guys know me, my attention span is very, very freaking small. So like, if I'm watching a movie, generally it has to grip me in the first 10, 15 minutes. And I mean, with that opening and with getting into the characters and kind of learning who everybody is, and then finding more characters. And like I said, once again, it goes to one of those things where I like ensemble movies. I like movies like this. I like movies like Wild Bunch, or the Magnificent Seven, or Seven Samurai, or all these different movies where there's a lot of freaking characters and you have to get to know every single person. I mean, that's why I do what I do, write the stuff that I write, because I like that. I don't like, once again, I don't like movies where there's like 2 or 3 people stuck in a house and they have to figure out how to get out or something. That's really boring to me. I want something where there's a lot of depth and a lot of characters and a lot of people that I can care about. And this movie had every single person I cared for at some point. Even Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, when he was still trying to talk to Dirk, at his car, and he was still going, hey, can I still make out with you? Can I still kiss you? I was just like, oh my God, dude.
So vulnerable.
I'm like, I feel so bad for you, and I hope that he, look, I wanted to see something happen with him, and I was so glad at the end. You get to see that he's working with doing a commercial. He's got an actual work. He's working with those guys. Like, they love him. He's there. I guess he was a PA or something.
He was sound. Yeah, he held the boom mic and stuff like that.
Did he? Because, he must have done a lot more, because he also went and got Dirk.
I think he did a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I think he was a gopher. He pretty much did everything they asked him to do. So you'd hold the boom because they had a really minimal set and stuff. Yeah. They even talk about that was another thing I really liked about the movie. It really went into the technical aspects of things, like with the guy I mean, I'm like thinking, dude, this is the wrong time for you to be asking him questions of whether or not to do film or video, you know, but like, that's something like, you know, that was a big question, like, you know, and the fact that Jack for so long did not want to do, you know, video because
Right.
you know, he wanted everything to be, you know, feel like a real film.
Yeah,
And
the
then-
artistic integrity.
And that's exactly the period I love, because you know all the movie directors that I love and the stinkers, that's the same problem they went through. They were used to shooting in film. None of them wanted to shoot in video because they felt it was going to diminish their work, but they
Mhm.
had to change in order to keep up with the times, and they all struggled with it.
Yeah, like your boy Ray, right?
Ray Dennis Steckler.
Ray Dennis Steckler. Yeah, he, you know, he basically, that was his thing too, right? Like he didn't want to. He always wanted to shoot in film. He didn't want to shoot a video, and so like yeah, so Jack Horner was like kind of the perfect direct, you know, low budget porn director. You know,
Yeah, but
like,
what
kind of person.
and when he did
With a
when they
vision.
were when they were doing that his first scene, Dirk's first scene, and it's just the expressions on everyone's faces when they saw him, and then just how artistically they were just and then it shows the inner workings of the camera moving and
Mhm.
stuff like that. It was just, to me, that's just so
Yeah, it
amazing.
gave me chills when
Yes.
it gave me chills when I saw it, you know, because I'm, you know, I mean, look, I'm a big person on HD and everything. Like I love HD, but you know, I mean, if I could shoot in film, I probably still wouldn't.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh,
still wouldn't. I'm sorry. Because
I
it's just it's too much. I mean, you have to piece everything together. It's just too, like, you know, it's too much work. I would rather you know, I'd rather be simple. We can get more, you know, that was the beauty at the end of the movie where they said, oh, we can just keep shooting because, you know, like they don't even have to stop, you know, or whatever.
Yeah,
Because they don't have to worry
just the
about it.
lighting alone for traditional film is so much more involved and so much more difficult, so much more expensive. I mean, it's so much easier to do it on digital, but you lose a lot of the quality, though, in my opinion. It's just,
You do, but
what are you going to do?
you know, I mean, then again, there are like these cool things, these cool tricks these days where they're able to make it look like film, you know, and especially when you put it into like a 4K resolution, I think it looks a lot better, to be honest, but I'm not, that's me, you know, like I'm into that.
And I think Jack Horner would disagree with what he said in that one scene. He's like, if it looks like shit and it feels like shit, it's got to be. He was so against doing video, and then showing when he had to do video, and it just, you could tell how I don't say disinterested, but how lack of the creativity was just. He was just.
Oh,
was
come
somewhat
on though.
broken.
Come on though. The limo scene was perfect because it just kind of showed the fact that like he was at that rate, he was just like, I don't care. I'm gonna host my own my own show where
It was like an early reality show for porn.
Yeah.
well, right,
said
and it was
he-
also early. There's a porn group called Bang Bus, and that's what they used to do. Is they used to pick up people on the street. Well, supposedly, but I think it was. I mean, obviously, it was written or whatever. But they pick up porn stars off the street, and then they'd bring them in and they fuck them in the
I wouldn't know
cars.
anything about this stuff.
Well, I'm just saying. I was just saying, like, that was like when I was watching that. That's what the first thought in my head was. Like, this was an early Bang Bus. You know, it's a Bang limo. I'm like, why don't people do Bang limos? Like, that sounds even better. Like, I mean, that seems more extraordinary. I don't
But
know.
he even made the comment. He says Jack Horner's thing on film on tape.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So it's just like he was just like,
I know.
you could
He
just
was,
tell in his voice.
He was
He was
disinterested.
he didn't care. He didn't like.
And
like
then when he got his muse from an acting standpoint, and he knew he was the star with Dirk and stuff like that. When he could come back in, he had the whole family back together, and it was right, and that's really where it all brought it back together.
I got to say, it's kind of interesting though, Joe. I mean, when we were talking about getting a movie from you and having you finally being able to throw one out there, I kind of figured, well, maybe it's going to be like in the mid '80s, a horror film or an action film or something. I didn't expect Boogie Nights. I was pleasantly surprised. Not that I would expect anything bad. I just kind of figured you were going to go in another direction. because this is a little more on the artsy side. But I was very, very pleasantly surprised and pleased because this is a great film and I've always
I
loved
know.
it.
It's
So
funny that you say that, Paul, because like Joe and I will be back next month with a movie also from Reseda, Karate Kid, and we know you're not a fan of that one, so maybe that's like more of along the lines of what you were thinking of what he would have picked or whatever. But I mean, it just goes to show you that Joe loves, and even you, to the point of like, I'm surprised sometimes in the movies that you really like, Paul, when you'll be like, oh, that's a great movie, and I'm like, Paul, what? This is not something that I would expect from you, because it's something I like or something, very much, and I don't know, like we don't always agree on what the movies we love, whatever, but that's why we do.
Sometimes we do, this one was one, Actium Maximus was one. I mean, come on.
No, don't throw that one in
part
there.
of my rationale when I looked at this one, I looked at some of the other stuff that was done with Film Freaks, and I said, I felt this would have been a nice piece into that, because I mean, you did a Carpenter film, you did a Kubrick film, I mean, a Spielberg film, did Road Warrior. So I mean, you've done some different things. I was like, oh, this will fit right in there with that. I think in a different way, but yet, I mean, I think that's what makes this series so good and such a good path to continue.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've done so many different things for film, but also I think that's the great thing about me and Paul running the show is that we have different tastes on what we think are like our favorite movies. Like what I say my favorite movies are, he would normally go, oh, that's probably bland or mediocre, and and sometimes the movies that he picks, I might not be completely 100% into as much.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the thing is like, especially now that we're doing it kind of in a way separately and from different places, we can do those films that, that Paul would want to do that I might, not be into.
At least I try to figure out ones that I know I like, but I think you and maybe other people might also like. Made one. I had a pretty good idea you were going to probably, if I got you to see that you were going to enjoy that one.
I did. I very much, and it's not a movie I would have like ran out to watch.
Breaker Morant was another one.
Yeah, Breaker Morant. Yeah, but like, and Watership Down, another
Watership
movie.
Down.
I wasn't. Oh, that was a Criterion watch, I think, though.
It
but
was.
Still. And so I think Breaker Morant was as well, right? Or no, was it? I think it was.
I don't remember.
I think it was.
Probably.
But like, like I know for a fact, like Hitchcock, I know we're probably, gonna want to, all gonna agree that it's a good movie or whatever. If it's a good, if it's because I don't generally pick the Hitchcock movies that people. I mean, there's not many that people don't like of his, but. P.T. Anderson, like I said, if you had chose Magnolia, I would have said, I'm sorry, I'm out. And maybe I'll have to rewatch it because like I said, I do remember liking Boogie Nights enough that I bought the movie, and stuff. And I really love the commentaries and stuff, like old school commentaries he used to have. He had one for Boogie Nights. He had one for Hard 8 as well. And his, like, what he says about directing and about writing and everything is like what I used to love about Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino used to do these commentary tracks, and then he just got to the point where he's just like, nobody needs to, I do enough interviews or something. And I feel like that's what P.T. Anderson does, is like, I did enough stuff. I don't care about telling people. And I used to love that stuff. Like, I feel like commentary is becoming a dying art.
Yeah.
It's a shame. It's a shame. But I will say this about Magnolia. It is my single favorite role or character I've ever seen Tom Cruise in.
Well, I don't doubt that.
Best performance ever.
I don't doubt that because I know you're not a huge Tom Cruise fan, but
not at all.
Well,
he was perfect in that role.
Yeah. Well, one other thing, when Paul, you mentioned about thinking I was going to choose something from like the mid '80s or something like that. In generally speaking, '70s and '80s films probably are my favorite, and that is normally where I go. And this one, filmed in the '90s, but it's about the '70s and '80s, so I guess there's
Right.
sort of
Right.
that. That's probably.
Right.
But
Right.
but you are onto something that most of the crux of my films that I absolutely adore
Well,
and love is.
you and I are also a bit older than Jonathan too, so we've grew up with a lot of the love for those '80s and '90s
Yeah.
films.
No,
too.
oh, 80s, for sure, man. Because I grew up watching, like, my favorite movies are like Ghostbusters and RoboCop and fucking Princess
Lost Boys.
Bride, Lost Boys. I mean, I absolutely adore the 80s, but and early 90s and whatnot, like in 90s, like, I mean, that was my childhood. That was your guys' adulthood. So, like, it's completely different, kind of have this little generation gap going. You guys are a little bit closer to age than me and you guys. And so I can understand sort of like, looking at, well, like I said, I was at high school when Boogie Nights came out. I was a junior in high school. It's 97.
Wow.
I was a
I was
junior.
30.
Wait, I was sophomore. I'm sorry. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I was a sophomore in high school and in 97. So movies I was watching were stuff like Mallrats and Chasing Amy and stuff like that, which Chasing Amy has been part of either one of these, Film Freaks or Criterion Watch.
Film
Yeah, well,
freaks.
97 has a couple other of my favorites in there too. So I mean, it was a masterful year for cinema, in my opinion. I mean, just right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of L.A. Confidential, which how do you guys feel about that?
Dying to do that film on Film
Yeah.
Freaks.
That one, and I really enjoy Good Will Hunting as well, which is same year.
And Good Will
but-
Hunting, actually, like, Burt Reynolds
skipped
lost
Titanic.
to Robin Williams, who,
Well,
I
I think they went the right direction with that.
I think so too. I think Robin did honestly did a better job, but as far as like a role and a part, that whatever.
Well, he won it for that, so he over for the Oscar.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
mean,
so-
and I think Burt Reynolds did a fantastic job, but like
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard, man. When you have like 5 great movies that they have to pick from,
Mhm.
and they just have to pick who is the best.
That was a problem back then, not so much now. But
Yeah, unfortunately.
I'll let you guys cover Good Will Hunting. I'm not a big
I'm not a fan of that. Well, then I mean, that year Titanic took a lot of the awards anyways, but that's a different story, I guess. But
I mean, yeah. Well, when that goes back to, you see, we like Good Will Hunting and Paul doesn't, but that doesn't make it a bad movie if we, either way. I mean, it's just like Paul's got certain tastes that he likes. So that's what I like about Film Freaks, is I think that Film Freaks is going to continue to thrive, especially through Zoom, with us doing different movies that, we might not be, some people may not be fans of.
Plus,
Yeah.
I think Moody brings up a very good point. Sometimes the first time you see a film, you don't particularly like it. Years later, maybe you give it 10 years, 15 years, sometimes maybe even a couple of years. You go back and you revisit it, and then you're like, wow, I like this a whole lot more better the second time or even third time around than I did when I originally saw it. Maybe it was just a different mood or different sort of circumstances or something changed, and now I get it.
Mhm.
I think it's because, I mean, as far as, me with like filmmaking wise and other things, I've learned a lot through the years, even 10 years ago, 2010, when I was making little short films, I was completely different mindset of like what, I felt as far as filmmaking goes, and everything. I think if I watched this movie 10 years ago, I would have had the same exact thoughts before, like I would have hated it, back 10 years ago, because I would have probably still been bored by all the stuff. Now I've watched movies that I can appreciate, but I don't want to watch all the time, like Citizen Kane. I appreciate that movie. I own it. I like, I might watch it again at some point, but it's not one of my top favorite movies. And that's and not to say that's a terrible movie, it's just, but I look at it through the filmmaking perspective now, and I look at it and you go, wow, this is amazing for that time period and everything.
Mhm.
And people have stolen shots just like this, even Hitchcock, I believe, has stolen shots like Orson Welles, or whatever. So like, and that might be wrong, but I think, I'm pretty sure Hitchcock even enjoyed, Citizen Kane, you know what I mean? And
So did Lloyd Kaufman, Citizen Toxie.
no. Well, on the completely different end of the spectrum.
And that's me. I love both ends. Not so much the middle. I love both ends.
And in a lot of movies nowadays, it's like, I mean, it's like instantaneous gratification you have to have, the special effects, the big time, cuts and all that stuff. And that's where movies like Boogie Nights and the ones you're talking about, other ones from the past, you can let it breathe. And some of the shot selections where it just pans across slowly, and it helps develop stuff. And it's like wine, you just let it breathe, and it makes it so much better.
And even those, like in Boogie Nights, you look at those scenes that kind of like, they have to let it breathe and everything. Those scenes are still like, like interesting. There's still stuff going on enough where I'm like, my ADHD brain is like going, okay, wow, what is going on here? Like this is still very cool. Like, as opposed to like, there's a lot of films these days that try to go on a slower route, and they just become boring. Like, there's just not, I don't care about these characters.
They're not Paul Thomas Anderson. That's the thing.
And
He's an excellent director.
And that's and that's what we talked about earlier on some of these scenes where it would pan across, and it'd be like, okay, you're getting to see Buck talk to Becky. You're seeing Amber talking to Dirk. You're seeing Jack walking across to talk to something. You see all these different things happening, but it's developing each of their stories. Plus, it's giving you a full scope of that world.
Right.
And
There's no filler. There's no filler at all. There's no pointless bickering. There's no shit.
I just want to point out that this video that we're doing right now is pulling up P.T. Anderson. We're going a little longer than like we usually go, but I feel like we probably should. But I think that fits with the theme of this whole episode. So I think that's really funny.
And if we were singing songs, it'd be Magnolia.
Yeah.
Rain and Frogs.
Look, I love musicals. Like, there's nothing, like, I have nothing against musicals at all. I love musicals. If it's just, nope. I'm not. I'll have. Maybe I'll watch it later. It won't be this year, but maybe I'll watch it sometime and give it another try. But I won't be on the show to do it. I'll have to watch it on my own.
I have to watch his newest film. I still haven't watched Phantom Thread yet.
I haven't seen it either. I'm dying to see it.
Yeah.
That's the only one of his I don't think I've seen. So yeah.
There you go.
All right. Well, just about wrapped up this particular episode. I think it was a really good one.
I think so too. I think we got a lot out of it. Well, I mean, once again, it's a 2.5 hour long movie. There's so much that we didn't even get to go into that happened in the movie. Like, we can literally talk about every single thing that happened.
Talk about Luis Guzman for 2.5 hours. He's such a great performance. Great character actor.
I know. I love him.
He just wanted to be in the film.
Right. He is so funny.
Jack, I want to be cast in a film. Get me in a film.
Well,
he's a bartender.
He got to do that in his own commercial. So
there you
or
go.
whatever, I think I think it's a wonderful kind of thing. Like, I feel like he's a great like all the actors in this film are fantastic. So I want to thank you, Joe, so much for picking this and everything. I'm guessing since you picked a good one, Paul let you pick, another good one maybe next year or something.
And you should let Joe pick one too.
All right. I'll let Joe pick one next year as well, because I think my last one's going to be Karate Kid, and then I think you have one more, Paul. And
haven't decided about that one yet.
Okay, and then so that'll be the end of the year. That'll be November. and then we're going to be taking a break, and
Break.
then we'll be back on Sick Flick TV first before we are even put these things on YouTube. So that'll be fun. But
All right,
anyway,
guys.
anyway, before we end, real quick, Joe, do you have anything that you wanted to like plug or anything that's going on?
No, I've been talking with you on some project stuff and basically working with that right now.
Okay, yeah, we got a couple of podcasts that we're doing together. Joe's going to be taking over next year with the Hollywood Boulevard podcast as another co-host.
Outstanding.
So that's awesome. Paul, you have a podcast coming up fairly soon that you're recording. A new one.
Exploitation Sleazecast.
Yep, it's kind of perfect for this thing to
Absolutely.
promote. You know,
Yeah. I mean, originally it was going to come out mid-September, but my co-host is actually in the middle of filming, so
yeah,
we're kind of pushing that off. And if it comes out in October, that's fine. It's not a big deal.
yeah. I think October is kind of the perfect time period anyway, because it's kind of a spooky thing, and people like porn. I don't know. That time. Whatever. And then we've got a bunch of stuff. We got Supernatural Assassins that is funding right now. So please, we're gonna have a link at the bottom. If you can donate, that'd be great. If you watch this whole thing all the way to the end, awesome. We really appreciate that. This is a long episode. So
It's a long one.
I know, just like Mark's Wahlberg
Just like
in the movie.
Figler.
In the movie. Sorry, I had to go there. But thankfully that was a prosthetic, because I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? Why did he just?
Didn't want to know. Didn't want to ask.
Oh well, I only found that out through, like, I just wanted to know. I was like, there's no way he actually showed that,
And supposedly he got to keep that as a prop or something.
Yeah, you got to keep that.
You gotta wonder. I mean, there was the brown bunny.
I'm wondering if he has it like in a case. In a case or glass case or something,
Oh yeah, he's got there's like a plaque that says the one that got away.
Literally. All right. Well, thank you guys. If you guys have a suggestion for us, or something, that you think like would be a fun one to do, please write it in the comments below. I don't know when we'll get to it or what, or whatnot, but we might be able to do, like, for our Patreon members for Indie Film Cafe, we might be able to do, like, ones that you guys request for us.
Sure.
So
Give us money, we'll do anything.
Yeah. I mean, give us money, we'll do anything for sure. So please, check that out and let us know what you guys think. And thank you guys so much. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Joe, once again for picking this.
Well done, Joe.
Any last comments?
That's it.
All right.
Me and the monkey are signing off.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.